Hey folks, welcome to today's product showcase, 3 ways to unlock your data for more personalized, impactful campaigns. I'm your host, Cody Stover. I'm on the marketing team here at Customer.io. We've got Leah Thompson, who is on the customer success team, who's going to be our uh, guest of honor today, demoing us through some of these use cases. I'm going to give her kind of a more formal intro here in just a minute. But yeah, we're happy to have you here. I think this topic, as marketers, product managers, growth folks, we've all had some sort of big idea that we wanted to implement, but can probably all relate to the problem of you want to do this cool thing, but you don't have the data that you need to. Maybe you're trying to personalize a campaign based on your users' interests, or maybe you're trying to create a segment of users who've done a certain subset of things, or maybe you're trying to figure out how does a campaign actually lead to product adoption. Either way, we can probably all think back to a time where we were blocked because we didn't have access to the data that we needed to do the thing that we were trying to do. So all that to say, that's kind of the background on how we came to this event and this theme, and really excited to get into it. So we are going to dive in just a minute, but as always, we're going to give folks just a quick minute to join. As we wait, we want to hear from you. So I'm going to pop a poll up in just a second, but there's this topic of data maturity. So as we set the foundation here, so Sisense actually says data maturity is when data has woven its way deeply into the fabric of an organization, and when data has become incorporated into every decision that an organization makes. Love the analogies there with fabric and woven. But we want to hear from you. Where is your team as far as data maturity? So I'm going to pop this poll up. Let us know if you kind of are at the higher end of that currently right now. Maybe you feel like you have access to all the data you need and are utilizing it. Maybe you're more in the medium range. Maybe you have access to some of your data, but you definitely would like more. Or maybe you're just getting started out and you're kind of at the low end there, but you're ready to tap into more data. So either way, let us know there in the chat. Cool. So as we wait for those responses to come in, for folks who maybe are customers of Customer.io, welcome. Or if you've had experience with us before, we're glad to have you back. If this is your first time ever at a Customer.io event or hearing of the Customer.io platform, we're also very thankful to have you here. So just a quick background into Customer.io. We are a data-driven customer engagement platform. So up until last month, you probably knew us for our Journeys tool. So this is our omnichannel workflow builder. So this is where you combine all of your email, SMS, push campaigns, anything you want to do with in-app messaging or webhooks. You're building out these workflows based on connection with your app or your third-party tools. So building campaigns that adapt and react to what's happening. I'm really proud to announce, as of last month, we also added a new product to our customer engagement platform, our CDP, or as we call it, Customer Data Pipelines. So if you've used a CDP in the past, or maybe you know of CDPs, we've been building a lot of really data-friendly features in Customer.io for the last few years, things like reverse ETL and integrations with tools like Mixpanel and Amplitude, a lot of things that kind of line up with what a CDP does. And customers were even asking us, could you be my CDP? And at the time, our answer was kind of. But as of last month, we launched this product, and now we can more firmly say yes. Customer Data Pipelines is something that actually is in early access right now, but kind of gives us two pillars to our overall customer engagement platform. So you can send in all your data from your apps, from your CRM, from other third-party sources, organize that in our CDP, and then it's you can plug it into any platform you want, but it's even more powerful when you plug it into our Journeys tool, so that you can, again, build those campaigns that adapt and react to every single moment in your customer journey. Okay, that's enough on Customer.io because Leah's going to give us a deep dive. Today, we're going to actually focus more on our Journeys platform. So CDP, we actually have a follow-up webinar later this month if you want to learn more about that. But today, we're going to kind of keep focused in the Journeys product. Okay, Leah, without further ado, thank you so much for joining us. Leah Thompson, folks, she is a customer success manager here on our team. Leah, thank you for coming on the show, and also give us a quick rundown. What's kind of your role as a customer success manager? And on the topic of data, what are some ways that you help folks unlock their data on a day-to-day basis?
Well, thank you so much for having me. So my role as a customer success manager as it relates to data. So I work with clients at all stages in their data maturity, clients that are new and just starting out getting their data integrated into customer.io, and clients that have really integrated data from multiple sources, lots of information available. And we talk about your integrations, messaging strategy, messaging use case, your audiences, and we talk about how your data from all of your sources, plus the data that we have in customer.io, can all work together to really personalize the engagement experience with your customers.
Love it. And just a quick look at the poll. Looks like most folks are in that medium range, maybe accessing some of their data, but wanting to become more data driven in what they're doing. So yeah, I'm excited to get into it, Leah. Thanks for joining us. All right. So folks who have just joined, welcome, welcome. Here's a quick look at where we're going to go, and then we'll dive in. So again, 3 ways to unlock your data. We're going to kind of look at these 3 themes. First off, we're going to look at unifying your data. How do you integrate it all into the same place and then start to organize based off of it, building out those audience segments and things like that. We're then going to talk about how you can act on it. So building data-driven campaigns, aligning your campaigns with, again, that live integration. So what's happening in your product experience. And then we're going to round it out by measuring quote unquote real conversions. And we'll kind of talk about that a little bit more as we get in. Audience, ask your questions in the chat throughout. We have a team member from our technical support team, Aaron. He's in the background, and you might see him pop up in the questions and chat. We'll take questions as we go. So definitely, if we're on a topic and you want to know more, ask the question, and we will definitely address it. Otherwise, Aaron can follow up with you in the chat. All right. So we are going to get into that first topic. Just a quick background here. Leah's actually going to share her screen. We're going to pull up Customer.io and start walking through some examples. But as we do, just to note, the instance of Customer.io that we're going to pull up today is completely a demo instance. So there's no real user data. All the data is fake, randomly generated stuff just for demonstration purposes. Just for a little context too, we're going to base a lot of what we're showing kind of on real world examples that we've learned and picked up. But we're going to use this fake example company called Fluently.io just to kind of make these examples a little bit more tangible. So Fluently.io, it's a language learning company with a mobile and web app. They've got a subscription model, and yeah, we'll use them for context today. All right, Leah, so this first theme, unifying your data, and I think just to set the stage here, a challenge that we hear a lot is, when data is spread out across a bunch of different tools, it's really hard as a marketer or product manager to, launch a campaign and actually trust that this data is, accurate and up to date. What do you see here? Like, why is this challenge so important? And why is it also, on the flip side, so important to kind of unify and bring your data into one place and use it?
Yeah, so it's not even just having your data across different platforms. Sometimes it's even having your data across different teams with different initiatives that maybe aren't checking in with each other. And I'm going to give you an example. This is a real example that I saw recently. I signed up for a service, and I immediately get an email encouraging me to download the app. It was not smart enough to know whether or not I had downloaded the app. Then I got an email encouraging me to make a purchase, and I got an email welcoming me to a user group that I joined. And then I got an email letting me know that a third-party account connection I had made through that platform was complete. And all of this occurred in the span of 45 minutes. And that is just way too much. And that is an example of the kind of thing that happens when your team isn't talking to each other and their data is not all in one centralized platform. It can result in a very poor user experience.
Yeah, I just popped this little graphic up. Not exactly your example, but again, I think we've all had this experience as a consumer where there's this barrage of messages. And yes, us who work in this field are probably thinking, I wonder what happened in their platforms or their systems for this to happen. So definitely a challenge that I think we've all can probably relate to. Okay, Leah, as I will pop the slides down and let you share your screen. But when we're talking about kind of solving this problem, let's start by talking about accessing the right data. So talk to us about how, in your experience, Customer.io unlocks the right data for users, and for folks in the audience maybe wondering, where is it coming from? Yeah, talk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. So customer.io is able to take in your data from all sorts of sources and bring it all together so that you can have a unified customer profile with all of their information. So we can bring in data from your mobile app, your website. We have mobile SDKs available. We have an API. We can connect to data warehouses like Snowflake. As you mentioned earlier, we also have reverse ETL, also known as SQL Sync. We support databases like Postgres, Amazon Redshift, Google BigQuery, a few more. We also have our new CDP product, plus we support other CDPs like Segment and RudderStack. And what I have on my screen right now is the customer.io activity log. This is a great place to see all of your data coming into the system in real time. And you can see where it's coming from. So if I were to expand one of these, maybe not a webhook, we had a Twilio SMS that failed. You can see where did it fail. You can see which particular journey it failed on. You can also filter. So if I wanted to see, where are my people coming from, I can look at something like, I can look at just people who were created. I can see that Gilbert 26 was created today and that he came from our API. So if you have more than one source coming into Customer.io, you can also see, okay, this person came from the API, or this attribute on this person was updated by the mobile SDK. So you can get a picture of what's happening. You can view this in the activity log for everybody. You can also drill into a particular person if you need. You can look at their individual activity for just that person, and you can get a sense of the history of what happened. It's really good to be able to see all of the actions that are happening, the different sources, and it's great for troubleshooting.
Yeah, and for folks in the audience who maybe are setting up their first integration, or folks who maybe have a lot of integrations already running, but are maybe auditing kind of their overall data set, how much of this requires developer help, and how much is something that someone can take on without a developer?
That really depends on where your data is coming from. If you are setting something up like sending over data from your mobile app, there would be some upfront work to implement our mobile SDKs and get that data flowing. But after that, it would go automatically. If you're using a CDP, it could be very quick because those have built-in features that require less developer time. If you're doing reverse ETL or SQL Sync, that depends on how crafty of a marketer you are. If you know some SQL, you might be able to get that set up without any developer help. So it really depends on the source and your technical comfort level. But it's again, it's an upfront work to then have something that's regularly flowing in.
Yeah, and again, like if you're using one of the customer CDP or Segment or RudderStack or another, that definitely usually cuts down time too. So, okay, so we saw the activity log and we zoomed in here on someone, but we have all this. So let's say we have all this data flowing in. For folks who are looking to utilize it more, organize it, start to build out audiences, talk us through kind of some features there that enable that.
Yeah, so once you have your data coming in for your people, probably the first thing you want to do is you want to start segmenting your audience so that you can start targeting them and sending them messages. So customer.io has a really powerful segment builder. We have two types of segments that you can create. The first one that I'll spend the most time on because it's the most common is a data-driven segment. And you can create groups of people where they automatically enter and leave the segment based on the state of their data. So in this example, for Fluently, this is a segment of people who need to set a goal still. And I can combine different criteria here. So I can say, hey, I want people who haven't set a goal, but people who have finished setting up their account, because I might not want to target them to set a goal right away if they're not even done the initial account setup. And you can get really, really in depth here. So if I were to edit this segment, you can see that this is a segment where all match. So everything here is an and. You can also use the or. You could say, at least one of the following conditions match. You could do this or this, but that doesn't make sense in this case. But you can add new groups and you can actually drag and drop. So I could do something like I'm looking for people who have set up their account or they meet at least one of these conditions where they haven't set a goal or I can add something new. And I can do this based on profile attributes, data about a person, events that they have, pages that they've viewed, emails that they have or have not received. So in this case, I'm going to add an additional criteria that they either haven't set a goal or they haven't started a lesson. So I can say, they have not performed the event lesson started. I can get really specific with that and say, they haven't done it at least once. So now I've got this really granular list of people with an account set up. They haven't set a goal or they haven't done at least one lesson. So yeah, that's kind of the power of the data-driven segment builder. We also have another type of segment called manual segment. It's not as common, but it's for grouping people together into an audience that just you don't have a way to programmatically define how they're related. A super quick example of that would be people who attended a live event in person and they gave you their business card. You don't necessarily have a piece of data on that, but you know that they're related. Or maybe you have like a press release contact list that is just a, hey, it's these 20 emails and I just need to group them together. So that's also an option. We also have a new feature that we have built. I'm not going to get into it too much today because I think it's going to be a future webinar. It's called Objects. And it's the ability to relate people to non-people data. So basically, people might belong to a walking group or they might belong to a book club. And that walking group has a name. It has someone who's in charge. We might want to reference that in a communication, but the data doesn't really belong to a person. So that's another feature that we have. And you can segment by object relationships as well.
Yeah, that's an exciting one. I think all of us who work at a company, there's things that happen when your company has an account with a SaaS tool or something, and the SaaS tool needs to send out an alert to everyone associated with that company. Kind of an example of objects and how people are related to a company or like you said, Leah, a walking group. So tons of use cases there. Leah, thanks for kind of walking us through getting the data in, starting to organize. One thing that I hear commonly too is we also have webhooks. So as people get more technical in their marketing career, their product management career, webhooks become something that's more and more on the radar as a way to get data in for little use cases. So talk to us about webhooks. What are they, and what are a couple examples of how folks can use those?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I were to just boil it down really simply, it's the ability to talk to a third party and get information back. So in customer.io, there's two different ways that you can use webhooks. Number one is you can have a webhook triggered campaign, which means that you could be in another system and it could send a webhook to customer.io when it is time to trigger that campaign. Customer.io will give you a URL that you can use in that third party to send the data there. And then you can choose what you do. You might want to update a person's information with the data that you get. You might want to do other things. Or from within a workflow in a Customer.io campaign, you can call out to another service as part of your campaign workflow. So it's a campaign that you've decided when it's going to be triggered, but you want to get information from a third party as part of that. So the example that I'm going to show you today is that second type, calling out to another service as part of it. I'm just going to find my campaign here, but I think it might be on the next page. For those of you who joined us previously in our Kickbox, we have a campaign recipe online you can check out to verify emails with Kickbox. And as part of this campaign, we're looking for people whose emails haven't been verified yet. And they are going to go through this journey, which is just to send a request out to Kickbox and find out, is this a risky email? Is this an undeliverable email? And I want to update that because I might not want to send to those people if their email addresses are maybe a little dicey. And you have the ability to send your request. It fully supports your HTTP post, GET, put, all of that. Depending on the service that you're calling out to, they'll tell you which type of command you need to send, and you can get a response. And you can update information on a user's profile based on that response. So here I'm going to say, okay, I've called up to Kickbox, I've gotten a response back. Verified is true. I've done that verification. And then I can take my verification result, some other information, and then I can look at that. And again, use segmentation to maybe filter out people that were marked as undeliverable. So this is sort of a more technical example of using a webhook, and we're kind of just doing a data update. But the other thing I wanted to mention is that you can get really creative as a marketer with some of these outgoing calls that you can make. Some things that I've seen, one of our clients is a book club, and they have a really personalized recommendation model that they have trained based on someone reading a specific book. It can return a list of like 3 books that they might also enjoy. So for their campaign journey, one of the things that they can do is, once a month or something, see what they're currently reading, call out to that service and be like, hey, here's more books that you might like. And something like that is really sophisticated. You can leverage the power of another service that's doing all that work for you, and then get the information and use it in your messaging. Something else really cool that we saw was a client that was focused on mental health services, and they actually called out to a weather API. And once a week, they would call out to this weather API. They'd find out for the client, because they knew their city. They had the data on that, so they could send the person's city, and they would find out, if it's going to be a nice week or not so nice week. And they actually changed the content of their messages. And if it was sunny, they said, hey, it's going to be a good week. You've got this. Let's get some stuff done. It's time to work on your goals. Like, let's go. Let's get it done. And if it was going to be kind of cloudy or rainy or not so good, their email content changed and said, it's okay. Like, this might be a tough week for you. Focus on self-care. It's okay if you don't get everything done. And like, here's some tips for your mental health. So you can use those webhooks for really, really personalized messaging, and you can also use them for kind of like data utility functions.
Yeah, I love that use case. And I think as we started this topic, we were talking about data being spread out or inaccessible, and how that is actually really hard to talk to your customers the way that you want to when you don't have that context. But just as you're explaining that, if you had all this data coming in on who your customer was, and then you also were using these webhooks to know exactly what the weather was like and how that might be affecting them, like at the end, you can send such a more personalized message at that moment, with all that myriad of things coming together. So that's a really cool use case. I love that one. All right, so we've talked about unifying data. Again, audience, let us know in the chat if you have any questions, but we're gonna jump here to the next theme. So once data is unified, organized, you're starting to use it to segment. Let's now talk about building data-driven campaigns and what's behind that. So again, talking about the challenge, I think that this theme kind of covers. So back to using the word data silos, but I think when you have data siloed across a bunch of different tools, and when your messaging is also siloed against a bunch of different tools, as Leah kind of talked about earlier, there's that risk that your customer might be receiving all kinds of messages that you don't have full control over, don't have full visibility, because your team is siloed around there. So let's talk about kind of bringing data in the same place, but then also starting to use it to build campaigns. And Leah, talk to us about why this is important. I guess, why is it risky, or what extra pressure does it put on a team if their data and messaging is spread out across all different tools, kind of in this graphic we're seeing here?
Yeah, so in addition to the things I mentioned earlier, I mean, like the timing of your messages may not work well, especially if different teams are messaging different call to actions. You won't have one clear call to action. The user might get mixed messages from you. They might not be clear about what you would like from them. They might get too many communications. If your data is all over the place, the other thing is that you won't have a central preference center, and then users don't have as much choice over how they interact with you. They might start unsubscribing. They might start unsubscribing in multiple places, which is always frustrating. And the other thing is that you're not getting any feedback about what's working and what's not. So if someone is responding to in-app messages, which you have in a different messaging platform, but they're not responding to email, how does the team that's working on the email know that actually this user is better to reach via mobile? You can't communicate their messaging channel of preference.
Yeah, I think that's where you end up with, that disjointed journey. Okay, so let's get back into examples. So I know you have a couple examples prepared here, but what are some first ways that you've seen teams leverage data in a really impactful way in their campaigns?
I think really that the biggest thing is to focus on personalizing the journey. The more personalized, the more relevant, the more engaged they'll be. The example that I'm going to show you right now is actually how we can take advantage of an omnichannel campaign to figure out the best way to reach out and engage with someone. So it's using data about what they are or aren't doing in terms of responding to messages. So in this example, Fluently.io would like you to set a personalized goal for your language learning journey. And this campaign is triggered by that goal needed segment that we were looking at earlier. So these are people with verified accounts, they haven't set a goal. The goal for this campaign is that I want them to set a goal within a week of receiving a delivery from this campaign. And people are going to leave this campaign when they achieve that goal. So when you see this workflow, keep in mind that if somebody does set a goal, they will immediately stop receiving messages from the campaign. Now, the journey that they're going to go on is the first thing I'm going to do is they need to set a goal. I'm going to send an in-app message, and my in-app message is going to encourage them to set a personalized goal. It's super cute. I would 10 out of 10 click on this message. The reason that I'm starting with in-app is because I'm asking them to do something in my language learning platform, and I'm assuming that they're in there taking lessons. This is kind of the closest to what I want them to do. They're not going to have to go to the platform and sign in or anything. They're already in the app. I can use a deep link to take them to the set goal page. So this is how I'm starting off. I'm hoping that they're in the platform, and I'm going to prompt them to set a goal. Now, based on what happens there, I'm actually going to decide what I'm going to do next. So I'm going to wait either for a maximum of a week or until they have clicked on the in-app message. Now, remembering that they'll drop out if they actually set the goal, but if someone clicked on this message and didn't quite get there, I know that they did engage with me, and they sort of, I almost got them, I almost influenced their behavior. So if somebody clicked on the message, I know that I reached them via in-app. So maybe I'm going to try in-app again because it seems like that was working. I'm going to give them a day in case they do end up setting a goal. I don't want to necessarily start reminding them immediately if they were going to get to it. So I'm going to give them about a day. And then after that, I'm going to try a reminder in-app message. And we know that this person clicked, so they've been to the set goal page. So we're going to give them a little bit of encouragement. You know, you've got this, you're almost there, a little morsel that maybe they're going to be more successful with their language learning goals. And if at that point they still didn't convert, I'm going to wait a couple days and I'm going to try sending them a push. And the reason I'm sending them a push next down this flow is because they did respond to a mobile in-app message. It seems like this user is engaging with me via mobile. And one important thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wait until a reasonable time, and I am not going to send a push to their phone in the middle of the night in case they don't have do not disturb on. And now after that, if they still haven't converted, I'm going to wait a few more days, and I'm going to try email. It seemed like they were, kind of biting on mobile, but I didn't quite get them. So I'm going to reach out and try email. Now, alternatively, if I go back up to the top here, that's one journey that they can take if they click on the in-app, but they just don't quite bite. Now, I'm going to wait for up to a week, and they may have seen the message, they may have dismissed it, or they may not have seen the in-app message because they didn't log into Fluently, because you do have to be logged in to see an in-app message. So if it's been a week, we didn't get any traction on mobile, I'm going to try emailing them, and I'm going to send them an email reminder. I'm going to try and make it a little bit personal. I have used Liquid here to, based on the language that they're interested in, perhaps if they're interested in learning French, I'm going to greet them with bonjour, just small little things to make them feel, a little more personal. And I'm going to encourage them to set a goal. And I'm going to wait a couple days. And what I do next is actually going to depend on my data. Do I know that they opened the email? If they did, I know that I reached them via email, and I'm going to try again with email. And I'm going to send them one last ditch attempt, a case study, and hoping that they'll see the value of setting a goal. If they didn't, so I kind of know that I didn't reach them via in-app, I didn't really reach them via email, I'm going to try with push. But after that, I've sent them a couple of reminders, and then after that, it's time to let it go.
Love it. And folks in the audience, let us know in the chat if there's a certain channel that you're interested in talking more about too as we go through this, or a certain kind of personalization strategy. Leah, for folks who are wondering, maybe folks have a simple flow like this set up that has some kind of reminder-based logic in it. But for folks who are wondering, how much should I be reminding someone, or how many times should I remind them before, I give up or move them on? What do you recommend there?
I'd say for what I've seen, I would remind them a maximum of a few times, like 2 to 3 times. Make sure that you put a few days in between. And if you've reached out a few times and they don't bite, pursuing it further could just agitate your users. Now, if it's just the one campaign that they didn't engage with, you can still keep them with other efforts. But if they're not engaging with anything that you're sending and they continue to not engage, it might be time to assess the value of keeping their profile, and it might be time to say goodbye. So when we talked in our Kickbox webinar about it's just a temporary breakup. It doesn't have to be forever, but maybe it's not the right time right now. And if they start engaging with you again, if they start taking actions in your platform that you're seeing there's some activity, you're welcome to add them back.
Yeah, I think someone phrased it as inactivity and unsubscribes aren't bad. It's just a data point that you can use to send the right experience to those people. So people who are engaging, great, like capture that and then follow up with them accordingly. People who aren't, that's okay. Like figure out the right experience to either win them back, or if it's like you said, time to break up, that's okay. It happens. I'm curious too, for folks in the audience who maybe are thinking which data point is the most important one, or if I'm creating this logic-based campaign that branches based on if they did something or not. How do I pick what that something is? What would you say for folks trying to pick which data points to use in these campaigns?
I would say try and pick the data that's going to provide the most personalized message and the most personalized journey. So, as an example, if you have a plan type, like if you have a free plan versus a paid plan, it would be really important to have that data so that you can send them on different journeys and send them different messaging that's more relevant to them. If you're customizing the content of messages, do it based on your interest if you can get that data. Like if you're an audiobook service and this person is interested in fantasy, don't send them an email blast about the new nonfiction book. Like they're probably, it's not relevant, but do, send them a notification about the new Brandon Sanderson novel. But by keeping it relevant with that, sending them things that are relevant to their interest, that's, if you don't do that, that's how you start to lose attention. Data about things that they have and have not done. Obviously, you can get that data from customer.io in terms of messaging that they've engaged with. I would also recommend sending events based on actions that they've taken. Have you started a language lesson or have you not started a language lesson? That's another great opportunity to customize that messaging. And you can also target based on recency. So, the message that you send to someone who's actively engaged with your product might be different than, someone who's a little more dormant. That might be a different strategy for trying to communicate with them. So really pick things that are going to make the journey and the message more relevant, because the more relevant the content, the more engaging it's going to be, the more valuable your messages will be to them.
Yeah, we've got a question in the chat as well from D. D, thanks for writing in. It says, any tips for using data to create onboarding series for a freemium pricing model? D, as we answer this, one question I have back to you is, what is your goal? Are you wanting to convert them to your premium subscription at the end of this onboarding campaign, or are you simply trying to get them to activate to a certain level? So would love to hear from you on that. But Leah, what have you seen as far as freemium model onboarding?
Freemium model onboarding. I've seen a few different things. Sometimes there is a limited time offer to try and get them to upgrade. Sometimes it's just a drip campaign giving them knowledge about the kinds of features that they can unlock and the additional things they'd be able to do in the platform. Yeah, I think sometimes education is really good as you teach them more about the product and why they would want to continue. But I have also seen, like promotions. Sometimes I even see personalized outreach because when you set up your sending domains in customer.io, you can have multiple firm addresses. Sometimes some of those communications in that onboarding situation, they'll actually send it from a specific person's email so that it's not like an info or a sales. It's like, hey, it's Leah at customer.io, and they'll send this personalized message like, can you tell me more about how you're enjoying the product so far? How's your experience? We'd love to hear your feedback. And they actually try and start a conversation because it's coming from a specific person that wants to chat with you.
Yeah. And D responded back, said main goal is to activate users. We actually, just to add on to what Leah said, we did an onboarding workshop a few weeks ago. If you look at our webinars page on Customer, you can find the recording. Where we talked kind of about this concept of picking a few key activation steps that are correlated to either conversion or maybe just to long-term retention, and then use those as kind of like the first steps in your campaign that you're using to branch on whether they did or didn't take that action, and then see if you can get people to those moments. I think the really cool thing about freemium model companies is if you get somebody, if your model's set up right, if you get someone to that activation step, the upgrade ask will feel like just simply removing a blocker, because they're already off and rolling, they're already finding value, they're already activated. So at that point, slipping in the, hey, are you ready to upgrade so that you can use more of the product, feels a lot more like you're helping them versus asking for that sale. Okay, for the sake of time, Leah, let's move on to our third theme here today. So now we're going to talk about how do you use data. We've talked about how to use data to unify, and then we talked about using your data to build these data-driven campaigns. And this last one is measuring what it actually is doing. So we're calling these measuring real conversions. I think the challenge is out there today is opens and clicks don't actually tell you the full story of how your campaign is actually performing. So if you're aligning your campaigns to actual product actions, D, to your point, trying to activate someone to a certain set of features, just because they opened or clicked doesn't tell you if that campaign's actually doing that thing. So Leah, what is the kind of the challenge here? And then what would you kind of recommend as folks start to line their campaigns to more of these real conversions?
Yeah, I would definitely say, oh, did you put me back on the screen?
Oh, sorry, I flipped up the...
No, that's okay. Oh, you know what? That's good. I'll go to the goal page. So when we measure success in customer.io, I definitely, would not recommend a clicker and open. We want to get that real behavior. So that's where things like events come in really handy. So I don't consider that someone has set a personalized goal that my campaign's been successful until they actually perform the event goal set. I know that I actually influenced the behavior and they went and did the thing that I wanted them to do. Key things here, you want to identify the behavior that you're trying to drive, and you want your campaign to have a clear behavior goal. If your campaign is trying to drive, 3 different behaviors, is it actually one cohesive campaign with one goal, or is it maybe actually a few campaigns that kind of run sequentially and they each have their own goal that you can measure? Another suggestion I'd say is watch the time frame. Don't set it to, you count it as converted. If they set a goal within a year, try and keep it down to a timeline where you can feel fairly confident that it was your messaging outreach that influenced their behavior. So now we can count it as a conversion here. I just have 1 week. Some people might want to tighten that timeline up. That depends a little bit on your organization. And you can do it within, receiving a delivery campaign, within opening a delivery of a campaign in this week. So maybe, if they just received it, they could have just seen it fly by in their inbox and not opened it and gone and done it. But maybe, you want to make sure that they opened it. Sometimes your goal is that they actually clicked a link and they went there from your email. But you want to be specific with your time frame. And you want to be specific with the conversion goal that you set. So in this case, they set a goal and that's pretty easy, but let's say that your campaign was trying to drive someone to purchase a product. And it's very specifically, I wanted them to purchase a laptop. And my goal might be, performs the event or order completed or something like that. You can use the data that's coming in on events to make sure that actually the right type of event is being counted. So if I had an order purchase event come through and it had the product, I would only want to count this campaign driving them to buy a laptop if inside the event it says they bought a laptop. I don't want to count this conversion if they bought a monitor. So you can be really granular there. The other thing you can do is if you need to be a little bit more specific and maybe there's a few criteria that really make a meaningful real conversion for you, you don't have to do it based on an event. You can also do it based on entering or leaving a segment, and you can use that segment builder to get pretty specific about the criteria that need to be met to count it as a conversion.
Yeah, and Chris in the chat comment, they found success setting up an event to make record of a sale. So actually showing that a real upgrade or payment did happen, which is just reading the chat here, which in our case is a sold insurance policy. Okay. Find it super useful to have an ability to set a goal also in broadcasts, making it easier to track campaign success. So yeah, Leah, are these conversion goals Is this something you can set across all different messaging types, campaigns, broadcasts, etc.?
Yes. Yes, you can.
Yeah. So, and would you recommend that? Is it always good to have a goal or a campaign aligned to a goal in every case?
I would say it depends on what your campaign is for. If you are trying to influence a behavior, absolutely set a goal. If your goal is to provide information, you may not need a goal, but it really depends. It depends on what you're trying to do. But I would say any instance where you're trying to drive a user to do something, set a goal.
Yeah. And probably back to the theme of this event, like if you're in there starting a campaign aimed at driving an action, but then you don't have that data point or record of that data point in your system here, then you're not going to be able to actually set up this goal. So it's kind of this great process where you go through trying to build the campaign and realizing I need something else. And so maybe if you're someone who's auditing your current data plan right now, you come back to your developers and say, hey, we need this one in, or you come back to your CDP and make sure that one's pointed in, so that you can, have every campaign working towards something, whether that's to Chris's point, an actual driving a sale, or to Dee's point, just driving a product adoption or activation step.
Yeah, and it's really important to have those goals because then you can measure how you're doing. And when you start, when you're set up and you actually start iterating and trying to improve, you can see how your success compared to before. And if you don't have that data, it's hard to know if your revised campaign is performing better than your previous iteration of the campaign.
Yeah, I think for folks in the audience too, you're going to get some follow-up emails after this webinar with some more resources and things like that. At the end of that campaign, we actually use a segment based goal. So Dee, back to your point, maybe there's a couple different actions that you're trying to drive next, and maybe you don't really care if it's one or the other. You just want someone to take a next step. So the goal of our campaign after a webinar is that somebody eventually jump into a trial or have a demo with our team. We would love for you to take an extra step and take a look. So that's kind of how we track success is long term. Did they take one of those little steps forward and hopefully saw enough value that they want to explore customer a little bit further? So, okay. So to make sure we have enough time for Q&A here at the end, we have a couple last little bonus features that we are going to show. So Leah, let's say somebody's got their data in, they're sending these data-driven campaigns, and then they're also making sure they're aligned to goals. So we've kind of unlocked the data in that little cycle. The next step is kind of like doing this long-term. So these last couple of features that we're going to show, I like to call them kind of the fine-tuning knobs, if you will, ways that you can kind of make sure that you are sending the right messages that people actually want to receive. So talk us through these next two little bonus features that we're going to show here.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one I want to show you is the subscription center. We, talked earlier about the importance of giving users the power to manage their preferences. And if you don't, they'll globally unsubscribe, and then you'll no longer be able to speak with them. And the data that we're seeing from our clients across all of their instances of Customer I/O is that for those that have implemented the subscription center and people have choices about the type of emails they receive, global unsubscribes are going down, which is amazing. You'd rather be able to keep engaging with someone in some way than lose the ability to talk to them. And then they're getting content that they want to receive. They're more likely to engage with you. So under the settings menu, under workspace settings, you can set up your subscription center. It's very easy. I feel most people can get it done in under an hour. It requires no development work. And you can set up a list of topics that people can subscribe to. So in this case, we're a language learning platform. So we have topics for specific languages, new product updates, some app coach features that maybe not everyone would appreciate receiving. And we can set whether they're subscribed by default or not. So when you have existing people in Customer I/O and you create a subscription topic, if you say they're subscribed by default, it's going to automatically subscribe everybody that's already in the system, plus anyone new who's added going forward. If it's a topic that maybe you don't think everyone will want, you can make it an explicit opt-in, and you can set it to subscribe no, and they would have to take some action with you to subscribe themselves. And so you now have the option to take people to a manage their preferences page where they can check off each box and they can choose what they're subscribed to. And on that page, you can set up a little bit of custom branding. You can include your logo, and you can also set the color. So it's not 100% the look and feel of your product, but you can get it a little bit closer so that it's a consistent experience. if it was really, really important to you that either these preferences were built into your app or that it had the exact same look and feel, you can also update subscription preferences via the API. You could code something custom if you wanted to, but you don't have to. And this page is available by default. And you can link someone directly to this page using some liquid. So at the footer of your email, you could say, hey, if you don't want to receive emails from us, you can manage your preferences or unsubscribe. You can put that manage your preferences first, hoping that that's where they're gonna go.
Yeah, I think this is a powerful one to make sure it's stuff that people actually want to see. This language learning company is a great example too, because somebody who's really heads down trying to learn French, if you're sending them emails about your Arabic and Spanish learning paths, you might distract them from their goal. It might actually annoy them to the point where they're like, hey, I'm out of here because I'm trying to learn French and you're talking to me about these other things. So love that. Okay, talk to us about message limits too, Leah. I know that's our other one we were going to cover.
Yes. So if you have a lot of campaigns running and you're doing a lot of sending out of your account and you think that there's a possibility that someone might get quite a few emails in a day, and again, we talked about that, we don't want to overload our users, there is a setting that you can set. Again, it's under settings, workspace settings, and you can set a message limit, which is basically the maximum number of messages that someone can send in a particular time frame. So you can say, someone can't receive more than 2 messages a day or 3 messages a day, depending on what kind of messages you're sending. You can set a limit that's right for you, depending on the type of engagement that you do. And we added a new feature recently. You can now auto retry for campaigns. So if someone is over the limit and they would have gotten a message, you can set it to auto retry for up to 48 hours, but the number of hours that's right for you, depending on the timeliness of that message. And now, not everything has to count towards message limits. Sometimes there's important announcements that you don't want to count. So when you're looking at a campaign and you are on the settings page, it's going to ask you, does this count towards the message limit or not? You can edit the limit globally if you need to when you're on this page. And you can use the settings that you set up for the workspace, or you can actually set a custom retry window per campaign. Again, if one campaign is super timely, maybe you don't want to retry messages, or maybe you only want to retry them for, up to 2 hours or something like that.
Yeah. And again, I think coming back to the theme of the event, if you're folks in the audience, if you're getting the right data into the platform, and then you're thinking about it logically to create, the right segments of people, and then you're triggering your campaigns based on specific things that are really personalized to what someone's doing, you've done 90% of the work to creating a really personalized experience. And then, as Leah showed us here, like these are kind of like the last little safeguards you can put in place to make sure that there's that constant feedback loop of what people want to hear. But then also you're setting up a safeguard that in case you have maybe you have to update your privacy policy, so you send out a message to everyone, you can kind of delay those other messages that might have sent that day so that you don't accidentally blow up their inbox. But yeah, lots of features to kind of customize it to exactly what folks want. Leah, there was one question in the chat before we jump to kind of formal Q&A here, but Hannah asks, can you build a task into a campaign or journey? Example, if a user completes the campaign, take this action, and can you trigger a task for someone to then personalize or reach out in a different way? So I think what Hannah is getting at is, can you kind of, maybe let people on your team know that there's a task to be done, and maybe the task is follow up with the person or do something else. But yeah, how does kind of that human interaction or task setting play out in customer IO?
You can. I feel like depending on exactly what you're doing, there's a few different ways. Maybe this is something, Cody, that we could maybe take offline and find out a little bit more about her use case, but there's different things that you can do in a campaign. You can add somebody to a manual segment, and maybe you look at members of that manual segment, new members, and you find out, who you should be following up with. You can send events from within campaigns. You can also send emails and override who the email is sent to. So if someone goes down a particular journey, you could actually send an email to someone that is not the customer, but is someone at your organization. So as I said, there's quite a few options depending on exactly what you need to do.
Yeah, and Hannah, for a couple examples of how we use tasks too. So when somebody is in a customer trial and maybe they hit a certain point of usage, like they've sent their first campaign, and we need to help them now. Maybe our sales team wants to help them, make sure that they have the right plan for them. we actually can, we set a webhook that goes to our Salesforce CRM and says, hey, this person has reached X level of engagement. Do you want to reach out? So that's like one way you can do it. You can also, we have a Slack command inside the workflow builder too. So again, maybe it's smarter to put it to your CRM, but if you don't want to blow up Slack, but you can also have a Slack message go to you at certain points in the user's journey. So just a couple.
Yeah, those are great options too.
Just a couple of look under the hood ways that how Customer IO uses Customer IO. Okay, awesome, Aaron. Thanks for chiming in there too. So we have about 9 minutes left. Before we jump to Q&A, first off, Leah, thank you so much for walking through those. Really great examples. And yeah, I hope audience get ready with your questions too, because we're happy to use this last time for that. If maybe this is your first time seeing Customer IO and you want to see more, again, we just launched our data pipelines product, and we also have our journeys product, which allows you to send all of those omni-channel campaigns. I'm going to post a link that'll pop up on your screen if you do want to book a demo. And the really cool thing about these demos is that we have, as we've kind of seen today, a lot of really industry-specific use cases built out. So our team's happy to walk you through that. In the comments on the demo form, be sure to indicate what you're trying to accomplish, and we can mock something to show you that exact use case. For example, if it's something like setting a task, or if you're trying to do freemium model onboarding, we have a lot of great industry examples there. The other quick promo I'm going to shout out is, again, we talked about this new CDP product that we have, but we didn't show any of it today. So if you do curious about how our CDP works, what all it entails, and maybe thinking about how, if you're already using our Journeys product, how you can kind of maybe consolidate everything you're doing into Customer IO. I'm going to post another link here to our next webinar, which is coming up later in May 23rd. So go ahead. It's a little bit early. It's a few weeks out, but go ahead and claim a spot, and then we'll also send you some reminder emails as we get closer, if that's something that you want to make sure that you don't miss. Awesome. Okay, we are at Q&A time, so we've got 7 more minutes. Folks in the audience, let us know something that we haven't covered today that you want to know more about, and we are happy to speak to it. Leah, while we wait for folks to bring up questions, I guess, are there any other examples or stories of ways that you've seen folks that you work with use data in a really compelling or interesting way, or just other industry examples you've heard of? Is there anything that we haven't covered today that you thought was interesting to bring up?
Yeah, one thing that I think we didn't really talk about today is the multi-split branch. So if you have data in customer.io, you can also send different versions of a communication based on that. So if you were in Fluently and someone was interested, in Spanish, you could send them a very detailed email about the benefits of learning Spanish, the places that they could travel specifically if they learn Spanish, and that could be something special for them that would be really, truly engaging and unique and relevant to their interests. Multi-split branch is really powerful for that. I've also seen the multi-split branch utilized in campaigns such as why did you cancel? And sometimes people have forms with a cancellation reason. If you can get that data in, I've seen people even have like a 10 split branch. If you canceled because you said it was too expensive, I'm going to send you this email. If you canceled because you said that technically it was hard to use, so I'm going to send a personalized outreach like, can we chat? Can I find out why you found it difficult to use? Can I maybe help you? That's a really good one that we didn't get to see the multi-split branch today, but I would really recommend.
Yeah, I love those. And you just mentioned like a 10 split campaign with 10 different paths. For folks in the audience who are like, whoa, that's a lot of splitting, I don't know, that's overwhelming. What would you say, like, what's the best place to start? With just a few different paths, or should you go big if you do have these hypotheses? How would you start?
You don't have to do a branch for every possibility. When you use the multi-split branch, there's also a default option that comes up for everybody else. So you could focus on, your top 2 or 3 things that you want to highlight. Like in the case of Fluently, maybe we offer 20 languages, but really French, Spanish, and Arabic are like the big 3 heavy hitters. I can do personalized content for that. And everyone else can kind of get a more personalized outreach, but generic, not language specific, because maybe I don't want to write 20 versions of that message. The other reason why it's important to
Right.
have a generic version too is you are going to encounter situations where you don't have the data on a specific user. In general, you know what language they're interested in, but maybe 100 people in the system, you don't have that value. You don't want to not send them anything. You still want to send them something, even if it's a little bit more generic. So having those fallback situations is really important. If you're personalizing an email and you want to greet someone by name, the first thing you should be thinking about is, what do I do if they don't have a name? I want to say hi there. So all of those things are really important to keep in mind. And I would say, you don't have to go big, because if you spend more time waiting and kind of planning this grand campaign and you don't have anything running at all, you're not making an impact. Sometimes when clients have big ideas, I tell them, focus on like your top three. Let's get those things running. Let's get something out there making an impact, and then we can continue. Because one campaign that's running and driving somebody's behavior is better than 20 draft campaigns that aren't doing anything.
Yeah. And just from a testing standpoint, easier to test adding one thing at a time versus throwing 10 things out there and then something works better than another. And you say, was it because of this factor or was it actually because of this factor? And now I don't really know. So we don't know how to repeat the process. So
Yeah, and sometimes the learnings that you can take away from your initial campaigns can help shape what you're going to do in future campaigns.
100%. All right, folks, we got a couple more minutes. So if there's any last questions, throw them in there. But Leah, you're on the customer success team here at Customer AO. So for folks in the audience who aren't working with a CSM currently, what would you say is the value of working with a customer success manager day to day?
I mean, the customer success manager is your strategic partner that's going to help you bring your messaging ideas to life. So, depending on where you're at with your data, we can have conversations starting with, all of your stakeholders, your creative, your marketing, your technical, about, what kind of messages do we want to send? Let's figure that out. What kind of data do we want to put in the message? What kind of data do we want to personalize their journey? Let's work backwards. Where does that data come from? How should we store it in customer.io? Let's plan that out. If you're more at like a medium data maturity level, we can talk about, okay, what data do we have? What can we do with it? Can we work with it in the state that it's in? And how would that campaign look? I can help you build it. And if you're someone that is very experienced in your running stuff, then the conversation becomes, how can we iterate? How can we improve? How can we start testing? How can we drive the needle of your success and increase it? So really, yeah, like we're not gonna write your creative for you or advise you on marketing strategy. Like you have the marketers and we have the customer IO know-how to work together to basically make it a reality. Whatever you want to do, we can help provide insight for how you can do that in customer IO. So it's a dedicated customer IO expert that you can chat with anytime.
Love it. And John in the chat asks a great follow-up question. How do we get a customer success manager?
Customer success managers are available on our premium and enterprise offerings. The enterprise plan offering comes with a dedicated customer success manager for the whole time that you're a customer. When you sign up for a premium plan, you can choose if you just want us available for your 90-day initial onboarding period. We'll help you get set up, have all those conversations about integrating your data and your messaging, or you can also choose to actually purchase a premium plan that comes with a dedicated CSM. So we always do that 90-day onboarding. It's really important to make sure that we get you set up for success in customer IO. And then if you stay on with a dedicated CSM on a premium plan with a CSM or an enterprise plan, we'll keep talking strategy as you have new use cases, as you have seasonal initiatives like festival or Black Friday, things like that. We'll continue to chat with you about all kinds of things from messaging to email delivery and sending reputation. Yeah, I obviously not to toot my own horn, but I say it's a really valuable resource.
Yeah, and John, actually, fun call out since we're on the topic of data today. We have a customer campaign set up to trigger 5 minutes after this event ends to have some follow-up resources. So, John, if you want to scope it out more, feel free to reply on that message that's going to trigger here in 5 minutes, and we're happy to scope it out farther. But I think just to add on to what Leah said, one of the most frustrating things is when you buy a tool and then you never feel like you actually fully used it or fully got the value out of it because it was just, you didn't know how to set it up or you didn't know how to go from there. So customer success managers really help kind of solve that and help you make sure that you find your way to the right features. Again, we're rolling out all kinds of stuff like we saw today, so we want to make sure that you get to all the features that will actually help you as Chris and Dee kind of commented today, accomplish those use cases, whether you're trying to onboard freemium users or you're trying to build in tasks to your sales team or your account managers as you go. Tons of use cases. We're happy to help with all of them. But yeah, thanks so much for demoing us through those use cases today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful.
Awesome. All right, y'all. We'll see you on the next one.